All right, so welcome to Views from the Capitol. I'm Jennifer Smith, your Director of Government Relations, and with me,
Jeff Cobb, Assistant Director of Government Relations.
And today we're going to talk about the Governor's State of the State address and a little bit into the budget, and at the end we'll take questions on any other issues that you may have. Other bills that are going on, other things that you hear are coming, anything like that, we'll take at the end. Feel free to ask questions as we go. You can type them in that chat box and we'll answer them as we go through. So the governor's speech was fairly short and to the point last night. It's one of the shorter ones we have seen in recent memory. It was about 35 minutes, even with all of the applause. She covered 4 specific topics, and that was education, healthcare, roads, and jobs. And so we're going to give you the highlights of each little topic that she talked about and what we think we may see coming up. We'll start with roads.
Well, so obviously roads continues to be a important topic around here. If you recall last State of the State, the governor proposed her gas tax that basically went nowhere around here. So this year she came back with what she calls her Plan B. And this basically is the governor on her own going to the State Transportation Authority and bonding for new roads. So this morning they agreed and approved the bonds. So it'll be $3.5 million worth of bonds that will, they will finance 26 new projects and 23 modified road construction projects, and then another 73 projects are going to be accelerated or moved up in the timeline. So this doesn't require the legislature to get involved. It's interesting to note that this only applies to the state highways and the trunk lines. It doesn't apply to local roads. So there'll still be a discussion about how you pay to fix local roads. I expect that will be part of the budget discussion moving forward. But it seems like she just decided she wasn't going to wait around for the legislature to act. And so we'll see what happens.
So the question is, what is the mechanism, budget source for repaying the road bonds, and how will that limit future budgets? I think that some of this we're still just learning. The speech was just last night. The admin board just went through it today. But judging by how we pay them now, it's coming out of the general fund is how we pay off bonds that are there. I don't know if you have more information.
No, and it's basically we're going to bond every year. We're going to starting this year, and it's a bond of 2.5%. That's the interest rate we're getting on it. And like it says, the projects will be paid for out of the general fund. So that's how we're going to fund them going forward.
So then she also talked about healthcare, and she focused on the Affordable Care Act for a little while and the issues that have been going on in Washington, the lawsuits that are out there. But she urged the passage of a 3-bill package that is currently being worked on by House Democrats that would protect people from pre-existing conditions, prevent insurance companies from discriminating against consumers, and pull in some of those other pieces that are in the ACA and codify them within our statutory system. She also talked about creating a task force on prescription drug costs and access. And she talked a long time about pushing to extend healthcare coverage for low-income women and women of color who have given birth. So currently low-income women can get coverage for about 60 days, and she wants to extend that to 1 year. She also wants to work on addressing the disparities for women of color because they have a higher mortality rate from pregnancy and birth-related issues than any other, than white women do. And so she talked for a while about this covering mothers who have had children, helping them with post-birth care, helping them settle their new form of birth control, postpartum depression, helping get those little ones off to a really good start. So that was the biggest piece of her health care coverage.
And then the next issue was on the economy. And, we've had 10 straight years now in Michigan of economic growth. And it's been good for a lot of people, but there are some people that are still struggling to get ahead. And so she noticed that, and she talked about how she wants to help some of the people that are falling behind a little bit. She did note that since she took office last year, there's been 11,000 new auto jobs created in the state, which is a pretty healthy number. There's been several large deals in Southeast Michigan with Fiat Chrysler, and Ford Motors just announced that they will be doing the electric trucks in Hamtramck. And so there's just a lot going on that's good things, but she wanted to focus on a couple things that we can work on. And one of those is overtime pay. So right now, to qualify for overtime pay, you have to make a salary of $35,000 or less. She's going to look at raising that cap so that more people would qualify for overtime pay. And then the other thing that she mentioned is she wants to work on cracking down on payroll fraud. And this is an issue that the Attorney General has been working on. There's a legislative package that's been introduced to crack down on this. We want to make sure that people get what they're entitled to get, that they're not being reclassified, they're not being cheated out of their wages. And so those were the kind of the two biggest issues that she focused on in terms of infrastructure, or in terms of the economy.
And then, of course, education. And there wasn't a lot of very specific things in education, but she did talk about wanting to double down yet again on literacy coaches and that literacy investment, and that the next step is to have those literacy coaches be able to train teachers to identify reading issues in their classrooms as well. And she said that there will be more on that in her budget presentation, which is coming up. She also talked about that they are partnering with foundations to help families navigate the third grade reading law. She described this law as punitive and a nightmare for families. When we talk about the retention piece, she didn't actually use the words retention, but that's what she was alluding to as she was talking. So she wants to use these foundations to create resources for families to learn how to get through the third grade reading law, to understand how the good cause exemption works for families, to give parents more access to that and more information about what is going on when these letters come home telling them that their child may be retained. She also committed to working toward equitable funding and talked about how one size fits all does not fit the different needs of a student in a classroom, and that we did take steps toward that in last year, but she wants to continue to work forward into creating that more equitable system. She also wants to create universal pre-K in districts where test scores are low or there is high poverty, to get more people into the GSRP program, the Great Start Readiness program. Again, she didn't mention that program by name during her speech, but in the things that she handed out otherwise, it talks directly about expanding Great Start Readiness program. She said in the budget that she will be increasing the amount of money we put into GSRP, so it will increase the amount per slot, and try to open that up in those areas where you have more need.
We have a question.
We have a question about, do you expect changes to the third grade reading law or just enhanced communication to better navigate the current law? I think both. What she talked about during her speech was enhanced communication, but what she has talked about otherwise is that she really has a problem with the retention piece in that law, and she would like to see the retention piece come out. To have the supports, to have the programs that are encased in that law, but not require retention. Even with all the good cause exemptions, it still is going to catch third graders in a net. And so I think we may see both, but all she directly spoke to was enhancing this communication. There is a bill by Representative Pagan in the House that would eliminate the entire retention section of that law. And I know that the governor supports that. While she didn't mention it in her speech, she has said it at other times. So I do think that that's going to be an ongoing conversation. And then she moved on to more of the higher ed type part of education. She's very committed still to that 60 by 30, 60% post-high school attainment of some sort, whether it's college or a certificate or going into the trades by 2030. She urged the legislature to pass the Michigan Reconnect program, which is encased in Senate Bill 268 and is currently in Senate Appropriations. This would create tuition-free opportunities for adults to go back to school to get training in new and specialized fields. So it's aimed really at 25 and older who need retraining or didn't get training when they were younger. But as our economy changes and as those jobs change, this would give them an opportunity to retrain themselves to get that education free to them. She also spoke of the FAFSA challenge. This challenge, we have sent information out before. Hopefully you've seen it in the news. But this is a challenge that she has issued to all of the schools in the state to get 75% of high school seniors to fill out the FAFSA. We have very low FAFSA completion rates in our state, and she's trying very hard to grow that number. She said that, you know, doing this will unlock Pell Grants and federal financial aid for students. It makes college seem more attainable by students who don't feel that they can afford to go by pulling down these federal dollars for them. So she has created this challenge. There are varying levels of awards, but the winning school with the highest percentage of FAFSA completion will receive a $10,000 grant from the state. As of today, we checked, there's a website for this, and on the website, it shows that we are at 36.5% of high schoolers so far, seniors in high school, and like I said, the goal is 75. This challenge ends on March 1st. That is the deadline for all state financial aid forms to be filled out, and so they tied this FAFSA deadline to that. So they kicked this off in early December and are giving you until the March 1st to get those high schoolers to fill out this form. So that was sort of the things she brought up during her speech. Like I said, it was fairly short. She was done in about 35 minutes. She laid out only a handful of specific legislative initiatives that she wanted. She tended to focus, as you can hear as we went through this, on things that she can ask the department to do, she can do through the state admin board, or she can do herself. And she started the speech with, if you're not going to do it, I am. And she was really talking about roads, but it sort of carried through the whole speech. So there's a lot of things in here that she's going to direct departments to do. I think there's a lot we're going to see in her budget. I think the budget will be very telling to see which of these programs she's going to push the hardest and how the legislature is going to react to some of that. So her budget is going to be presented to the legislature on February 6th. The Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference did show growth coming into the school aid fund. However, they just did a new study for MIPSers to see what the cost would be going forward. And that cost is going to jump this year by about $189 million, simply because people are living longer. So we will see higher costs for MIPSers, and that could eat into a lot of the growth that we will see coming through the school aid fund. So that wraps up our prepared remarks. Are there questions about the upcoming budget that we can try to answer? We don't have a ton of information, but we have a little. Or questions about the state of the state that we didn't answer as we were talking. And you can type those in that group chat box at the corner of your screen. Okay.
Wow.
Well, is there any other, we'll open it up at this point for any other issues that you're watching. It's been a quiet start to the year. Since our last views in November, we didn't really see a lot happen in the month of December for us that really directly affected us, but we will going forward. So curious if you have any questions about things that we didn't cover or things that might be coming up.
It was
One
about
question.
The 2x formula was before that one.
Was that?
Yeah.
I missed that. Okay. Let's scroll back up. Okay. Let me start over. Any feeling for funding the Student Foundation allowance, specifically anything for the 2x formula? I think what you will see from the governor is going to be similar to last year. It's going to be put through something closer to the School Finance Research Collaborative and equitable funding. However, we know that Chairman Schmidt is a big proponent of the 2x formula. He wants to close that gap before we focus on the equitable funding and weighted formulas. So you're still going to see, I think, a push-pull there. Last year, as you know, that's how it was laid out, and we ended up with the 2x formula that we did put through. So I think you're going to see the same thing. The governor will say, let's do it one way, and at least the Senate will point to 2x. I'm not sure what the House will do, to be perfectly honest, and that'll be part of the conversation we have going forward. Outside of coaching and info for families, any indication on additional funding to support meeting the third grade reading bill requirements? She talked about doubling down on literacy coaches yet again. In the last budget, they did increase the amount of money per coach and remove the matching grant for ISDs. I think that you will continue to see funding put into that for the coaches. Do you foresee any change to the ISD RESA funding? We did get an increase last year, but I don't really foresee any further changes. But at this point, I honestly, I haven't heard. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any insight on how the state superintendent will react to the governor's remarks? I know that the governor gives briefings to her cabinet, to both caucuses in both the House and the Senate. She spends all day doing briefings the day of State of the State. I haven't heard any reaction out of the state superintendent at this point, but he certainly would not have been caught off guard by anything that they were talking about last night. I think that that's something we may have to wait and see.
I think generally it seems like they're on the same page when it comes to a lot of these issues in terms of third grade reading, literacy, equitable funding. So I suspect that they were probably working together in terms of crafting the speech. So I would suspect they're on the same page.
Any relief for brownfield or dark store losses? There is a bill that's currently working its way through the House. It's House Bill 5059, and this would require that ISDs are reimbursed for their loss under brownfield redevelopment. The Brownfield Redevelopment Act has been around for quite some time, and it allows tax captures within areas that are determined as brownfield areas. Those tax captures for local districts are made up through the per pupil. So the local district is getting more state money to make up for what they're losing in the tax capture to brownfields. That doesn't happen for ISDs. And so this bill is trying to create that parity. And I think they have about an $8 million price tag on it. It would be school aid dollars that would go to the ISDs. But our argument has been that local schools are made whole. ISDs deserve the same treatment. So this bill is working its way through the House. We are strong supporters of it, and we'll keep you posted as it keeps moving. For dark stores, unfortunately, we have heard nothing. Way back at the beginning of session, we were in some work groups on this. The bill sponsors and Senator McBroom in the Senate were very willing to work on it. They were very eager to push this through. The committee it was put in the House, the chair is not really open to this idea. So there has been talk about reintroduction into another committee, but we haven't seen that happen yet. I do think that as we move forward, we can get bigger conversations about this because we do have a very strong champion in the Senate on it. And it may be that we have to start over there instead, but we haven't seen anything lately. But as we reported so many times last year, last calendar year was not your normal year. The budget and roads sucked the air out of everything. So this year may be a little more normal, if we have a normal in Lansing. And so some of these issues may be able to be brought back up because people are willing to expend energy on something other than the ongoing budget fight. Will the Ed Trust Midwest and Launch Michigan recommendations have any impact? Launch Michigan Steering Committee has been meeting with leadership and the budget chairs on some of their recommendations and dealing with the equitable funding. This work has just started with the actual reaching out to the legislature. So certainly those groups have some power behind them, especially Launch Michigan with being schools, philanthropic, and businesses. But it always remains to be seen what sort of impact they'll have. And as we go forward on the budget cycle, I don't think you'll hear much about what their impact may be until we get a budget we can look at, until we start seeing what the legislature's counter budget is. Are there any other questions? Any other legislative issues? Anything we missed?
I don't think so. What specifically is Launch Michigan asking for?
They have, sorry.
No, go ahead.
They have very general outlines. They do support the School Finance Research Collaborative equitable funding. They do want to see more money into early literacy. And I think those are the two things they've been meeting with the leadership on. As we go into the budget cycle, I know that push for more money into early literacy and into that K-3 reading space is one of their big targets. Will the Launch Michigan Ask link with the governor? With everyone on board with wanting better resources and better results at third grade reading, I think that at least in that space it will.
And it seems like she kind of was on board with that with her last year's budget too. It was pretty similar to what Launch was looking for. So I suspect it'll be similar this year. I think the more difficult is going to be with the legislature because they're sort of wed to the 2X formula and kind of generally reticent to increases in revenue. And so I think that will be where most of the work with Launch does will be with the legislature.
And how can we help? You can always help. Most of that help comes in just keeping an open line of communication with your legislators. Contact them with suggestions, contact them with concerns. Say thank you when it matters and hold them accountable when they do the opposite of what you expected them to do. When it comes to the actual details, when we have very specific bills we can reach out to you on, we will certainly send those alerts. This is a great point to plug News from the Capitol. If any of you on this call or on this webinar are not receiving News from the Capitol, it comes out weekly. That is also how we send all of our action alerts. So that'll tell you what's going on, and then that'll tell you that we need you to make a phone call or an email, that we really need you to reach out at that point. So if you're not receiving that, please shoot us an email and let us know. We can get you hooked up with it. But the how we can help is always in that ongoing building your relationships, but then being willing to reach out when we really can, when something's moving and we can really make that influence. And if you ever have questions or need help contacting someone or want to know specifically what can I do today, please always reach out and ask. That's what we're here for. We want to, while we advocate for you, we want to give you everything we can for you to be able to advocate for yourself. And if we don't have any other questions, oh, one more. Business contacts from Launch. There's a Launch Michigan website. I believe it's launchmichigan.org.
Yep.
You can find all of the contacts there for whoever you need to reach out to. The steering committee is listed there. The steering committee is quite large. So I would go to their website, check out it will also outline what they're working on and the things that they're pushing, but it will give you all the contact information you need there. And finally, if you want to watch the governor's speech, or I believe you can read it as well, if you go to michigan.gov/Whitmer under News and 2020 State of the State, you can find both the video and the written text of her speech if you want to see exactly what she had to say. So thank you for joining us today. We kept it even shorter than the governor. As I said, if you ever have questions, please let us know. We will get this recording up within the next few days so that those who weren't able to join us will be able to watch it. And if you ever have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask.
All right, thank you.